Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing. Why is delivery...
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £58 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Right now, TalkTalk TV and Faster Fibre is just £25.50 a month, fixed for 18 months. Plus, you get a year of Amazon Prime on us. Over 80 Freeview channels, all the on-demand players, and average speeds of 38 megabits per second. Plus, unlimited one-day delivery, thousands of movies, TV shows, and more from Amazon. Massive entertainment package, tiny price. So you've more to spend on popcorn? Search TalkTalk TV. TalkTalk, for everyone. Offer ends 22nd of April, subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening. Get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft with TuneIn.
Do your homework on this year's top prospects, rising stars, and late-round sleepers with football podcasts like Move the Sticks.
He is my pick because I know he is an athletic freak, a guy that is capable of doing it all. He can blitz, he can run, he can cover.
And when the draft gets underway on April 23rd, follow every round and every pick for free.
In the 2018 NFL.
It's always football season on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip 3, have a game night. In fact, why not make it a game day? Whether you're quarantined with kids or roommates, nothing passes the time like a game of cards, Pictionary, charades, dominoes, or Never Have I Ever. If you've got the hardware, break out the video game console and enjoy hours of guilt-free gaming. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as the White House issues guidelines to get America back to work.
Our approach outlines 3 phases in restoring our economic life. We are not opening all at once, but one careful step at a time.
Before beginning phase 1, states must document a 2-week downward trajectory in coronavirus cases and flu-like illnesses. Then, White House health official Deborah Birx says another 2 weeks of declines is needed before proceeding to phase 2.
Schools, daycares, and camps can reopen in phase 2. Visits to senior living facilities, however, should remain in hospitals prohibited.
After that, it's on to phase 3, when life returns to what Birx calls a new normal. Guidelines call on the states to establish testing sites, but make no mention on the availability of tests.
Well, meantime, there is optimism over a new coronavirus treatment in the works. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with those details. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Nathan. A drug from Gilead Sciences reportedly has patients seeing rapid recoveries in fever and respiratory symptoms. According to medical news publication Stat, most patients treated with Gilead's remdesivir drug have been discharged from a Chicago hospital. 125 patients were enrolled in the trial, most in severe condition. 2 died. Shares of Gilead are up 12% on the news. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. The economic impact from the pandemic is dramatic, with more than 22 million Americans out of work so far. In China, where the outbreak began, we're getting more information on the fallout. The economy contracted 6.8% in the first quarter. Here with more is Bloomberg's Neeraj Shahich.
The 6.8% contraction, don't think that came as any kind of a surprise to anyone. You look at the fixed asset investment, the retail sales, the industrial output data, none of it looking good, but you could interpret a smaller drop than expected in industrial output as maybe a bright spot there. Investors seem to be looking through the China data, though, otherwise it's priced in.
Indeed, despite the data, we're seeing global stocks gaining this morning. S&P futures are up 66 points, Dow futures up 619, NASDAQ futures up 155. DAX in Germany is up 3%. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 0.63%, and the yield on the 2 years at 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is falling, down 8.2% on $1.62 at $18.25 a barrel. COMEX gold also lower, down 1.3% or $22.10 at $17.0940 an ounce, and the euro 1.0822 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
1.3%. All right, Karen, thank you. It is 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Business in New York and New Jersey will stay closed until mid-May. In New York, the infection rate is slowing and the daily death toll has dropped, but Governor Andrew Cuomo said the lockdown in the state would continue.
Why don't you open tomorrow? Because we're afraid the infection rate will go up. And everything we've been doing is to slow the infection rate.
Starting today in New York, people are required to wear a face covering while outdoors and stay within 6 feet of others. That includes while in for-hire vehicles. For the first time since the coronavirus peaked in New York, the state's rates of hospitalizations, ICU placements, and intubations are down. Nursing homes across the U.S. are seeing clusters of COVID-19 patients, and many are reporting a high number of deaths. In New Jersey, one nursing home had 17 bodies crowded into a morgue that was only supposed to hold a few people. Governor Phil Murphy expressed his outrage at the situation.
I've asked the Attorney General to look into this matter, as well as to do a review of all long-term care facilities that have experienced a disproportionate number of deaths during the COVID outbreak, and I know he will take any and all appropriate action.
More than 60 people linked to that nursing home, the Andover Subacute and Rehabilitation Center 1 and 2, have died, including staffers. Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden says President Trump's plan to reopen the country is not the leadership he was looking for.
I wouldn't call it a plan. I think what he's done, he's kind of punted. He's decided that he doesn't have the right to make the call for the country.
The former vice president also told donors that a trio of high-profile endorsements he got this week from former President Obama, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders has triggered a surge in fundraising. Biden said his campaign raised $5.25 million so far this week. Biden and the Democratic National Committee combined for $26.2 million at the end of February, a small fraction of the $225 million that President Trump, the Republican National Committee, and their joint fundraising committees had amassed through the same period. Former lawyer Michael Cohen, they will be released from federal prison to serve the remainder of his sentence in home confinement amid the coronavirus pandemic. Cohen is locked up in Otisville, New York. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. Coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashar.
All right, good morning, Nathan. The NFL has, in the last 2 days, had its first 2 active players test positive for COVID-19. The day after Rams center Brian Allen, now it's a bigger name, Von Miller, the Denver Broncos, one of the NFL's top defensive players. He suffers from asthma, says he may have contracted while training in the Bay Area. Dr. Anthony Fauci earlier this week said he's in favor of sports' return without fans and with testing. He was asked about it yesterday at the White House.
It is conceivable that we will be able to do that. I think there will always have to be attention to making sure that we don't do all that packing in together. I think we'll be able to have sports events in that phase where you actually have participants there.
President Trump spoke Wednesday with all of sports' commissioners, and Governor Cuomo spoke with Mets owner Jeff Wilpon about the when and where of baseball's return. Denny Avdija is heading for the NBA. He's a 19-year-old who's been playing professionally in Israel. His mother is Jewish. He's projected as a top 5 pick in the draft. Jacob Toppin, his older brother Obi, was the college player of the year at Dayton, is transferring, leaving Rhode Island and heading to Kentucky. The Toppins were both born in Brooklyn and played their high school ball in Westchester. April 17th, this date in New York sports history, go back to 1964, and the Mets' first game ever at their brand new home, Shea Stadium. They lost, as they did often back then, beaten by the Pirates 4-3. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
The memories. Thank you, John. 5:37 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report from Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
Kushner Companies, owned by members of Jared Kushner's family, face another crisis. The firm's partnership in 4 Brooklyn office buildings barely covered debt payments last year. Now the global recession is threatening to disrupt a financial high-wire act, balancing an ailing major tenant, WeWork, and $300 million in loans issued in 2018 by South Korean insurers. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he wants to tap as much as $9 billion in borrowing that's available through a Federal Reserve program for municipal bonds. Murphy says he wants to take advantage of the program, which would buy as much as $500 billion in muni bonds. Without borrowing, he predicts major budget cuts. But New York and New Jersey are the 2 states with the most confirmed COVID-19 cases. They also have rainy day funds that are among the smallest in the country. This is according to data from the National Association of State Budget Officers. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
Thank you, Ed. 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting only about 4% of the 800,000 Floridians who have applied for unemployment benefits have actually received checks.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WBB, I'm in Chicago. I'm reporting that Boeing is out with plans to restart its manufacturing in the Seattle area next week after shutting down last month because of the coronavirus.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on signs the UK is taking a tougher line on China in the wake of the pandemic.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KRLD in Dallas. Southwest Airlines has approached its unions about working together to cut costs.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting car sales in Europe hit a record low in March.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. And another story we're watching, Cantor Fitzgerald breaking with its Wall Street rivals on job cuts. The financial services firm run by Howard Lutnick is cutting hundreds of positions. The reductions are the deepest in the industry since the coronavirus outbreak began. The latest edition of Bloomberg Businessweek is on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. The cover is on how Carnival kept cruises going even after it knew it had a coronavirus problem. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription to Businessweek at MAG Go, and you can listen to Businessweek with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Just head over to youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. S&P futures higher by 73 points now. Dow futures a gain of 674. NASDAQ futures higher by 170 points. 10 years down, 430 seconds. The yield 0.63%. 2-year Treasury yield 0.20%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hey, y'all. Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is your... When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
Get your MLB with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
It's I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
On air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Global News Update.
Special report, coronavirus update. President Trump outlines a phased approach to reopening businesses in parts of the country where coronavirus is being brought under control.
Our team of experts now agrees that we can begin the next front in our war, which we are calling Opening Up America Again.
The new guidelines are aimed at easing restrictions in areas with low transmission of coronavirus while holding the line in harder hit locations. Federal officials warn some social distancing measures may need to remain through the end of the year to prevent a new outbreak.
Governors will be empowered to tailor an approach that meets the diverse circumstances of their own states.
The crisis has thrown at least 22 million Americans out of work in just 4 weeks. Easily the worst stretch of U.S. job losses on record. The losses translate to about 1 in 7 workers. I'm John Trout.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Is it as ominous this time around?
They talk with the most interesting people.
Are they taking this seriously?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickDate by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are advancing along with U.S. stock index futures as tentative steps toward restarting the world's largest economy helps investors look past mixed progress on curbing the coronavirus and dismal data from China. Oil slumping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 71 points. Dow futures up 651 and NASDAQ futures up 165. The DAX in Germany is up 3.4%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds, yield 0.63%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oils down 7.7% at $1.52 at $18.36 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.5% or $26 at $17.0570 an ounce. The euro 1.0819 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2422 and the yen's 107.83. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, there's optimism over new coronavirus treatments in the works. Bloomberg's John Tucker has details in this live report.
Michael, the medical news publication Stat reports a group of patients being treated in Chicago are seeing rapid recoveries in fever and respiratory symptoms and are being treated with a drug made by Gilead Sciences. A researcher says most patients treated with remdesivir have been discharged from the hospital. And Roche Holding developed an antibody test for COVID-19. It says it plans to start selling early next month. Also, Moderna says the U.S. government has agreed to pay for the company to develop and test its COVID-19 vaccine now in a clinical trial. It could reach final stage testing by the fall. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
John, thank you. Spain reports 5,252 new virus cases today, the most in a week. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's just before 5:49 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. As the COVID-19 outbreak hits the U.S. economy, some Federal Reserve officials warn a recovery will be slow to take hold once social distancing measures are rolled back. Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan is one of those officials. He spoke with David Weston on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. Let's hear now what he had to say.
I think we're going to have a substantial contraction in the second quarter. And we've said publicly annualized as much as 25 to 30%, but again, that's annualized, so multiply by 4. We think we'll start growing again in the third quarter, and we will continue to grow into the fourth quarter. I probably would say today that peak unemployment may be closer to the mid to high teens, so maybe a little higher than I'd said before. And we still believe that we'll end the year with an unemployment rate something like 8 or 9 or 10%, but in that range. And the challenge going into 2021 will be to work that unemployment rate down.
So there seems to be a range of views among Fed presidents as well as the board. But if you take Mr. Bullard on the one hand saying it's going to be a sharp V, and you have Mary Daly now saying, boy, this could really drag into next year in a recession, where do you put yourself on that spectrum?
Here's the challenge. Going into this situation, we had sluggish manufacturing, sluggish business fixed investment, Obviously, a lot of it had to do with weak global trade. But the one thing we had going for us as an economy is we had a very strong U.S. consumer. We had a low unemployment rate. Household balance sheets were in reasonably good shape. And that was 70% of the economy. The challenge is, as we come out of this later this year, and if the unemployment rate really is 8 to 10%, you're going to have a weakened consumer who's going to, you would think, save more, be more careful, be a little bit more reluctant to spend. And that's going to be a headwind for the economy. And it may take a while, and I mean into 2021, for the consumer to get his or her footing back. And I think that'll be dependent on how quickly we can run down this unemployment rate to lower levels. So do I think it's going to be a V? I think the consumer situation makes me think that we'll have a recovery, and it'll be a solid recovery in the second half of the year from the levels we're at. We're still going to have a 4 to 5% contraction for the year. But then the question will be, what's the pace of growth and what's the state of the U.S. consumer? Those are the questions, and that's the issue I'm most worried about.
And the psychology of the U.S. consumer, it strikes me, is not simply being somewhat more conservative because they got burned in a downturn, but also concerned about their personal safety. How willing are people going to be to go back out, even when they're allowed to do it, to go to restaurants, to go out and spend, to really participate in the economy? Will there be some reluctance just because of personal safety concerns?
Yeah, so there's three levels of issue with the consumer. One is personal safety, as you mentioned. This is why testing, ubiquity of testing, is so I think that would do a lot to give consumers confidence to go into the workplace, to go out to restaurants, to go into other public gatherings. But that's very much dependent on how available is rapid testing. The other two issues are job insecurity. I just saw a survey from the New York Fed that said something like 70% of all workers are worried about their jobs, about losing their jobs. So there's that insecurity. And then the last issue is just what's happened to the consumer financially, and particularly that segment of the population, which is sizable, that doesn't have much savings and lives from paycheck to paycheck. And this is going to make it so they're even more cautious. So those are the three big issues that affect the consumer.
And that is Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan speaking with David Weston on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. Catch the show weekdays at noon. Plus, stay tuned for more insight from the Fed today when we speak with Loretta Mester. The Cleveland Fed President sits down for an interview at 9 a.m. Wall Street time this morning on both Bloomberg Radio and television. Karen.
Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. Business disputes are inevitable. Resolve faster with the American Arbitration Association, the global leader in alternative dispute resolution for over 90 years. More at adr.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The governors of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are asking President Trump for more support for all 50 states. The governors say the $71 billion in relief to state and local governments come close to matching the impact of the coronavirus. Several attorneys expect an EPA decision concerning mercury pollution limits on power plants to get tied up in lawsuits. Two Houston Astros fans who were suspected of using fake tickets during the 2019 World Series are suing the team. The two say they were wrongfully arrested and detained.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching is legal challenges facing the push for widespread coronavirus testing. Several governors say widespread antibody testing is key to reopening the economy. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo wants to test 100,000 residents a day. For more on the matter, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to Harold Krent, a professor at the Chicago Kent College of Law.
Using these antibody tests would mean isolating someone not based on what virus they're carrying, but based on the fact that they're not immune to the virus, even though it's something they may never get.
What's about this development is that governments are considering
creating two classes of citizens. One class of citizens will be in a very inferior place, will be locked to their homes, can't travel, can't possibly work, just because of the fact that they don't have the antibodies, because of the fact that they may not be immune from this awful disease.
So the state would be deciding whether someone has the right to work based on a predictive test that's not definitive. And that impinges on civil liberties. It would definitely be challenged in court.
I would think so. Already we've seen these stay-at-home orders challenged by businesses who claim to be essential businesses. And the sweeping magnitude of this two-class system, I'm sure, would foment much more litigation. I mean, what you'd be saying is that one group of citizens, they can work, they can help their families, they can provide for them, maybe they'll get even a premium for working, and the other group has to be relegated to their homes. That impinges upon the constitutional rights to travel, to pursue a livelihood. And at the bottom of this is a test for antibodies that even scientists say is uncertain how well it'll work. It'll overpredict and it'll underpredict.
So what standard of review would a court use in a case like this?
The standard review is a little bit unprecedented. States have articulated their standard review somewhat differently from contagion, but we've never had a sort of national-wide pandemic before this magnitude, at least since the Spanish flu. My guess it would be a kind of clear and convincing evidence. That's the standard that the Supreme Court has used for involuntary commitment, and it seems to me that that's the most directly applicable here. So if we take away your liberty, not because of what you've done, but because of a prediction, there we have to meet a demanding standard, and it should be a demanding standard, and so it'll be some variant or close to, I believe, a clear and convincing standard. Not the highest that we use for criminal incarceration, but much higher than just a normal preponderance of the evidence burden of proof.
Why not the highest standard here, since you're basically putting someone in the prison of their own home?
We are, but I think that there's a recognition of the fact, just as we have in the civil commitment of people who are dangerous, that public health and public safety demand extraordinary measures.
And that's Chicago Kent College of Law professor Harold Krent speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues on a day when futures are moving higher. This is Bloomberg.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, you must stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Stay home to help protect the NHS and frontline staff working to save lives. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn. It's time to come together from a safe distance. Tomorrow, join the biggest artists on the planet and households around the globe for One World Together at Home, a one-night event of music and action supporting the heroes of the COVID-19 crisis. Co-hosted by Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and Stephen Colbert, the live broadcast will feature performances by Lady Gaga, Paul McCartney, Billie Eilish, Elton John, Lizzo, Stevie Wonder, and many more. Search Together at Home to join the live stream tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, April 17th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures gain as the White House issues guidelines to reopen the economy.
Shares of Gilead jump after positive reports on a new coronavirus treatment.
The economic fallout from the outbreak comes into focus as China's economy suffers a historic slump.
New York Governor Cuomo says businesses will remain closed until mid-May. Plus, Joe Biden says big endorsements this week brought an online money windfall. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
John Stashauer in sports. Von Miller, the one-time Super Bowl MVP and Pro Bowl pass rusher of the Denver Broncos, second active NFL player to test positive for COVID-19.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good Friday morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by Portfolio Analysts, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analysts to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free at portfolioanalyst.com.
And U.S. futures are gaining as we head into the final trading day of the week. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 79 points this morning. Dow futures up 708. NASDAQ futures up 185. The DAX in Germany's up 3.7%. CAC in Paris up 4%. And the FTSE 100 up 3.25%. Nikkei 225 in Japan jumped 3.2%. And the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was up 1.5%. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 0.63%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil down 6.3% on $1.25 at $18.61 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.5% or $25.30 at $17.0620 an ounce. The euro 1.0817 against the dollar. British pound 1.2419 and the yen 107.89. Nathan.
All right, Karen, thanks. We begin at the White House with President Trump laying out guidelines to get Americans back to work.
Our approach outlines 3 phases in restoring our economic life. We are not opening all at once, but one careful step at a time.
The president says 29 states are under consideration to reopen relatively soon, though he declined to say which ones.
The specifics were outlined by White House health official Deborah Birx. Before beginning the 3-phase process, she says states must document a 2-week decline in coronavirus cases and flu-like illnesses.
It must have a downward trajectory for 14 days, as well as the influenza-like illness and the syndromic illnesses, and a downward trajectory in the number of positive tests with persistence of high levels of testing.
Restaurants and movie theaters can open in phase 1 if they practice strict social distancing. Sports will resume without live fans. States must then document another 2 weeks of declining cases before proceeding to phase 2, and that's when schools and bars can reopen.
Schools, daycares, and camps can reopen in phase 2. Visits to senior living facilities, however, should remain in hospitals prohibited. Large venues can operate, but solely under moderate physical distancing, and elective surgeries can resume on an outpatient and inpatient basis.
After that, it's on to phase 3 when life returns to what Birx calls a new normal. She says good hygiene and maintaining some social distance will remain important.
We did not put a timeline on any of the phases. We want the governors, with the data that they have, community by community, to be setting up those timelines.
The guidelines call on the states to establish screening and testing sites, but make no mention on the availability of tests. Business leaders and state officials have raised concerns about shortages of COVID-19 tests.
Well, at the same time, there is optimism over new coronavirus treatments in the works. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. A drug from Gilead Sciences reportedly has patients seeing rapid recoveries in fever and respiratory symptoms. According to medical news publication Stat, most patients treated with Gilead's remdesivir drug have been discharged from a Chicago hospital. 125 patients were enrolled in the trial, most in severe condition. 2 did die. Shares of Gilead up about 12% on the news in the pre-market. Meantime, Roche has developed an antibody test for COVID-19 that it plans to start selling next month. And Moderna is receiving nearly $500 million from the U.S. government to develop and test a vaccine that's currently in a clinical trial. The Cambridge-based company's vaccine is one of the first to begin human trials. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. The economic impact from the pandemic is dramatic, with more than 22 million Americans out of work so far. In China, where the outbreak began, we're getting more information on the fallout. The economy contracted 6.8% in the first quarter. Here with more is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
Not so surprising given the lockdown, but the contraction was worse than the -6% seen in a Bloomberg survey. And it was the grimmest since at least 1992 when the series started. Factory output down 1.1% in March, better than the estimate. Retail sales off 15.8%, and investment fell more than 16% in the quarter. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. Back here in the U.S., stimulus measures are working to stem the economic fallout, but the efforts are proving uneven. For details, we bring in Martin DeCaro from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
The Small Business Rescue Fund is out of money. Even if Congress approves more funding, the impact of the package has been off-kilter. States with the worst outbreaks are receiving a lower proportion of loans. Firms in New York, New Jersey, and California receive loans covering 20 to 30% of eligible payrolls. Meantime, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Kansas have about 70% of eligible payrolls receiving funds. We're also seeing errors with those $1,200 checks being sent to individuals. Some are receiving less than that amount. Others are getting more. And a few are seeing payments show up in unrecognizable bank accounts. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Martin, thank you. The Federal Reserve's been doing everything it can to stem the impact from the virus, and it may still do more. That's according to Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan.
Continuing to look for pockets of the economy that have been overlooked in what we're doing, and through no fault of their own, are under stress.
Kaplan tells us he's open to further expanding the central bank's emergency programs, and we'll hear more from the Fed coming up today when we speak with Loretta Mester. Tune in for an interview with the Cleveland Fed president at 9 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio and television. Futures higher, S&P futures up 78 points, Dow futures up 696, and NASDAQ futures up 186. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Karen, thanks. 6:07 on Wall Street now. Let's bring in Michael Barr for more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says businesses in the state will stay closed until May 15th. Cuomo, at his press briefing yesterday, said the back-to-normal process will be long and will incorporate lessons learned along the way.
You know, this is not just government deciding. It's government deciding with private businesses who now have to take a look at this new normal, this new reality, and tell us how they think they can adjust to it.
For the first time since the coronavirus peaked in New York, the state's rates of hospitalizations, ICU placements, and intubations are down. There are now almost 12,200 deaths in the state from coronavirus. New Jersey schools will remain closed until at least next month due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Phil Murphy making the announcement during his daily news conference yesterday.
We cannot be guided by emotion. We need to be guided by where the facts on the ground, science and public health take us. And that means it will not be safe to reopen our schools or start sports back up for at least another 4 weeks.
Murphy also expressed his thanks to New York and Governor Cuomo for sending his state 100 ventilators. New Jersey has reported more than 3,500 deaths from COVID-19. Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden commented on President Trump's new guidelines to reopen the economy. Biden says the U.S. should be focusing more on testing.
It seems to me there ought to be something that focuses on how do you get as many tests done as possible to allow some elements of the economy, some elements of society, be able to get back to some sort of normal.
Joe Biden told donors that the trio of high-profile endorsements he got this week from former President Obama, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders has triggered a surge in fundraising. Biden said his campaign raised $5.25 million so far this week. Biden and the Democratic National Committee combined for $26.2 million at the end of February. That's a small fraction of the $225 million that President Trump has amassed through the same period. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. It is 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashauer.
Good morning, Nathan. Second day in a row, we've learned of an active NFL player and a positive COVID-19 test. First, it was Rams center Brian Allen. Now a much more high-profile player. Denver's all-pro pass rusher Von Miller, MVP of the Super Bowl a few years ago. Miller suffers from asthma. thinks he might have contracted the virus while training in the Bay Area. Subject of the return of sports came up at President Trump's daily press briefing.
Many of them are going to be starting without the fans, so it'll be made for television, the good old days, made for television, and it'll go that way, and then fans will start coming in. Maybe they'll be separated by 2 seats, and then ultimately we want to have packed arenas. When the virus is gone, we're going to have packed arenas, and we're going to be back to enjoying sports the way they're supposed to be.
His task force announced that new 3-phase federal guideline, and games with fans are not even in the 3rd phase, but without fans are. Cam Newton, former NFL MVP, still without a job for 2020. Jacksonville running back Leonard Fournette says his team signed Newton. The Jags' projected starter is Gardner Minshew, a rookie last season. A high school basketball star not even bothering with the one and done of college. Jalen Green from Fresno, California says he will instead play in the developmental G League for 1 year to get ready for the NBA. Green might be the top pick of next year's draft. Tonight is the WNBA draft. The New York Liberty have the first pick. They are near certain to take Oregon's record-setting star Sabrina Ionescu. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. And the NFL draft is less than a week away, so how will that play out in the face of the coronavirus pandemic? Find out tonight on the Bloomberg Business of Sports show when we speak with Michelle McKenna, Chief Technology Officer for the NFL. You can catch that conversation tonight at 7 and tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio. Subscribe to Bloomberg Business of Sports wherever you get your podcasts. S&P futures are higher by 81 points. Now Dow futures up 721. NASDAQ futures rising by 193 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
We know you don't have other plans tomorrow. That is, unless you already marked your calendar for One World, Together at Home, a night of music and action in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Turn on TuneIn beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific to hear live performances by Alanis Morissette, Elton John, Billie Eilish, Paul McCartney, Eddie Vedder, John Legend, Casey Musgraves, Keith Urban, Chris Martin, Billy Joe Armstrong, J Balvin, Lady Gaga, Lizzo, Maluma, Stevie Wonder, and more. Search Together at Home on TuneIn to join the live stream tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1951, Mickey Mantle plays his first career game for the New York Yankees.
There's a drive to left center. Man will dig it hard. Still going. Big catch.
Flash. Mickey Mantle bangs out his second homer to score a pair of teammates.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, search sports documentaries on the TuneIn app.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
All right, JP Morgan kicking off earnings season with the lowest profit since 2013, setting aside over $8 billion for bad loans, setting the scene for what we can expect this season as a result of the coronavirus. Joining us now to discuss this is Whalen Global Advisors Chairman Chris Whalen. Chris, thank you for really, this is the key takeaway from the bank earnings that we've gotten so far, right? How much the banks are setting aside for loan loss provisions. Was it remarkable to you, the numbers that we've seen so far?
No, I thought that Jamie Dimon in particular decided to go big and just take the number up quickly, which is fine. It's really a presentation issue. You're taking cash and you're moving it to reserves. So you're not actually spending the money yet, but you say, I've got losses coming. So I think the whole industry is going to do that. In my model, I had taken it up 100%, in other words, double it, and then I was going to double it again in the second quarter, which gets us up more or less to 2008, 2009 levels of reserve. But the unemployment number is a lot higher, and that's a key factor in most credit models. So that when you start talking about 25% unemployment, you take those default estimates up as well.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks advancing along with U.S. stock index futures as tentative steps toward restarting the world's largest economy helps investors look past mixed progress on curbing the coronavirus and dismal data from China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 82 points. Dow futures up 717 and NASDAQ futures up 198. The DAX in Germany is up 4%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds, yield 0.63%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is down 6.4% on $1.27 to $18.60 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 1.8% or $30.70 at $17.0150 an ounce. The euro 1.0821 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2426 and the yen's at 107.88. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, there's optimism over new coronavirus treatments in the works. Bloomberg's John Tucker has details in this live report.
Michael, the medical news publication Stat reports a group of patients being treated in Chicago were seeing rapid recoveries in fever and respiratory symptoms and are being treated with a drug made by Gilead Sciences. A researcher says most patients treated with remdesivir have been discharged from the hospital. And Roche Holding developed an antibody test for COVID-19 that it says it plans to start selling early next month. Also, Moderna says the U.S. government has agreed to pay for the company to develop and test its COVID-19 vaccine now in a clinical trial. It could reach final stage testing by the fall. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
John, thank you, sir. A new UN report says children have so far largely escaped the most severe symptoms of COVID-19, but the social and economic impact is potentially catastrophic for millions of youngsters. According to the report, the coronavirus pandemic is turning into a broader child rights crisis. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan?
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's 6:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and while it may be risk on for equity markets this morning, it is a much different story in the oil market, particularly on the NYMEX, with West Texas Intermediate crude now below $19 a barrel on a grim demand picture going forward. Let's bring in Harry Chillingarian. He's head of commodities market strategy at BNP Paribas. Good morning, Harry. I mean, how do you forecast a pickup in demand for oil when the world remains on hold with coronavirus?
Well, I guess really it's down to making assumptions as to when, confinement measures, social distancing measures will be relaxed. And that's when you're going to get activity going. As you know, in the U.S., President Trump has presented his plan to get the economy back on track. And globally, the issue is the same. So while OPEC implements production cuts, while we're going to get market-driven reductions in production elsewhere, really the big recovery in demand, and it remains uncertain as to its pace, happens when you start lifting those confinement measures.
So what do you make of the guidelines that we got from the White House yesterday? It seems as though it leaves a lot of the onus on the states when it comes to reopening. What does that mean for the oil market, particularly in the shale patch?
Well, I think in terms of, country guidance, the governors are closer to the ground and will be able to make that decision. Perhaps the president sees in the governors the ability to judge locally what is best, and perhaps that's the direction the administration took. Now, after that, of course, in terms of restarting in the oil patch, it's more an issue of economics here. And we saw yesterday ConocoPhillips indicating that it would be cutting spending even further and reducing output both in Canada and the United States. So when it comes to oil and restarting oil production, it's going to be down to the economics.
Do you see other shale producers following ConocoPhillips' lead in that regard?
The shale industry at large is likely to see very large declines in output. Just look at the number of rigs that have been idled, reported by Baker Hughes, for example. The U.S. EIA sees average U.S. crude production declining around 1.6 million barrels per day between March and December this year. The International Energy Agency puts this number closer to 2 million barrels a day. So, we will probably see further curtailments, and some of them are already taking place.
And we reported this week that the Trump administration is thinking of paying U.S. producers to leave oil on the ground. Do you see that as a possibility? What impact would that have?
Well, that would be one form of curtailment of supply while keeping producers in business. I guess the difficulty is that the U.S. administration earlier on had sought to buy U.S. oil in order to top up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and was denied funding by Congress. So I'm not exactly certain on the mechanics of how such a proposition could be